Good evening. Good evening, citizens of Saugerties. I'm Jason Silverman. I'm one of the directors of Upstate Films, and we're really grateful to have you all here tonight. Thank you. You're all in the Orpheum Theater, which has been serving Saugerties for 118 years. Built in 1908. It was bought by the Thornton family in 1918. They turned it into a movie theater from a vaudeville house in 1919. And Upstate Films bought it in 2021. So we're really happy to be here. We feel like we're doing our best to carry the torch because it's been an important center of activity and conversation and inspiration and joy-making for the village for such a long time. So we feel it as an opportunity. Tonight is really special to us because we want to be here for everybody. So I'm really excited to see what you all are going to talk about tonight. First of all, is anyone new to the Orpheum? Is it the first time for anyone here? Anyone here first time since COVID? No? Okay, good. Welcome home. We're grateful to have your continued attendance here. Got great films going on. We've got our family series started. If you want to learn more, you can get on our mailing list. We send out the schedule every week. So please join us this summer. And are there any members of Upstate Films in the audience? Oh, thank you. Right. Thank you. Our members get special ticket prices and invites to special events. Most of all, they're helping us keep this alive. The ticket sales do about 50% of our budget, and sponsorship and grants and everything does the other 50%. So the members are a really important part of keeping the Orpheum alive. I want to thank all the elected officials who are here, who are joining us. I see the mayor here. Bill Murphy, thank you for being here. And some of the town councils here. We're grateful for all that you do for Saugerties. And I think that's all I've got. One other thing I wanted to say is the space tonight, one of my mentors taught me a saying that I take with me, which is the world progresses through difficult conversations. And so I think we're engaging in real dialogue tonight, which I appreciate. And let's continue to be respectful of each other. There's, I think, a little heat around some of these events sometimes. We did a discussion of Winston Farms, which was, no, it was beautiful. It was a little intense, but it was beautiful. We can all handle it. We can do it, and that's what we do as neighbors and as community members. We talk and we help to move things forward, and we come to consensus. So I hope we can all model that kind of behavior. So I really appreciate you all being here to participate in that. And I just want to welcome Suzanne Bennett and Katie Kokinos, who helped put this event together.
So the Balanced Growth Community Conversations was Jason's idea. He tasked Suzanne Bennett from ShoutOut Saugerties, and I do outreach along with programming and the recycling. I know y'all see me outside dealing with sorting through glass and metal and paper. So to do conversations, like Jason said, get together and talk. Because sometimes, a board meeting or a village meeting is, we're witnessing a meeting. It's not exactly the time to have a great big dialogue. So this is our fifth? Counting Winston Farm?
Yes.
Fifth?
Yes.
Yeah, so.
Starting in 23.
2023.
Well, 2024, the 23 was what
Okay.
sparked it.
This is when we turn into a vaudeville act. Who's on first? So anyway, we're so excited, and we'll give you an overview of how the evening's going to go. Carl Olbacher, he is a local government specialist from Albany, is going to first give a presentation with Amy right here and a PowerPoint and 20, 30 minutes. And then we'll have Tim Rogers from New Paltz, who is the supervisor, and then he will get up and talk about their experience in New Paltz. And then we're going to have the first round of questions is going to go to our town board and our village trustees. Any questions or comments? And then we'll bring up our town supervisor, Fred Costello, and our mayor, Murphy, up onto the stage. And then we'll open it up to the audience for questions and comments. And
Well, those will be timed. Those will be timed. We'll have 3 minutes that we'll start out with, so we can hear from all of you who have questions and have a comment after this. So we'll end with that.
yeah. So I guess silence your cell phones. Is there anything else we need to?
No, just
Go on the road?
yes. I think so. We're here to learn, and yeah. So.
And just-
And there will be, also, I think we should say that there will be another meeting, too. This
Yeah.
is not the only meeting on this topic,
Yeah.
unless we should come to some mighty resolution at the end of the evening. Unlikely,
No, it'll
but there will be another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just be talking. Yeah, that's great. So yeah, turn off your cell phones, and thank y'all all again so much for coming. This is really exciting. I love this. Okay. Yay. You've got that. Okay.
Hi, good evening. I'm Carl Ublocker from the Department of State, Division of Local Government Services. We're going to just talk about the grant program that our office offers to help with municipal consolidations, dissolutions, shared services. Previously, here in New Paltz, I've been with the Department of State for almost 20 years, and I was involved with the police consolidation with Greg Helsmortel. But tonight we're going to be talking about, that was through our local government efficiency grant. This potentially could be through our CREG or citizen empowerment, citizen reorganization empowerment grant. And we'll get into this a little bit more. Tim has been involved with our office dating back to when he was mayor, and New Paltz has been involved with this situation for a number of years. So we'll start off with Amy. She's going to do part of the presentation, then I'll finish up.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Oops, can you hear me? So I'm just going to kind of start off with a little bit of an overview about reorganizing a local government, whether it's through a board-led type of situation or if it's a petition with a voter-led situation. So when we talk about dissolving or consolidating a local government, we do that through the Government Reorganization and Citizens Empowerment Act. That was enacted in 2010 to replace some previous sections of town and village law about reorganizing. The process is applicable to towns and villages, fire and fire protection districts, special improvement districts, and other improvement districts. It excludes school districts, city districts, special purpose districts created in created by counties under county law. So just a little background there.
Could you speak into the speaker a little?
I could. Is that better?
Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so when we talk about reorganizing, we're talking about either dissolution or consolidation. And dissolution is the termination of one local government unit or more. The services provided may end or be assumed by another local government. When it's a voter-initiated process, a petition for dissolution only needs to be circulated in the local government for which the dissolution is proposed. So in your case, if you talk about dissolving, only the village residents and voters vote for a dissolution, and the town and the village board votes on it. Consolidation, on the other hand, is the combination of two or more local governments, and that can be taken on in a couple different forms. it can be a new local government can be formed by combining 2 or more local governments and eliminating the originals, or it can be one existing local government absorbed by another one, which would then be terminated. So for this instance on consolidation, for a voter-led initiative, the petition would need to be circulated in each local government. So both the town and the village need to circulate a petition and have it accepted and go through that entire process. And everybody in both the town and the village get to vote. So kind of the difference there. And the 2 town boards need to approve it as well. So on a board-led or reorganization, the statutory process starts when a plan is endorsed by a governing body by passing a resolution. So the resolution starts the thing. That's the local government saying, yes, we support this. Before enabling legislation is voted on, the board develops a plan to present to the voters. The plan may involve an initial study, which would involve considerable data collection and analysis. To facilitate the study, the local government may want to develop a committee to help examine the issues, identify the issues, and kind of help with the plan. The local government may also want to speak to get public input from local folks, so you may want to have some stakeholder meetings or that sort of thing. And so the study can present the existing conditions in the village, where the budget's at, existing costs, where the state of affairs basically right now. And then it can also lay out what would happen during a consolidation or dissolution. So what would happen to all the special districts? When would it happen? It would lay out kind of the scenario of what would happen if you dissolved. And also, what's good about a study is it can also lay out some alternatives to reorganizing. If it's decided that you don't even want to vote on it or the vote goes down, there can also be some cost-saving suggestions or ways to be more efficient, that sort of thing. So this study happening before any sort of vote and the plan itself happening before a vote can really give the voters an informed lot of information so they can make an informed decision. So the kind of the timeline here of how this all goes down with the board initiated thing. Here's our little flow chart. This is for the board initiated process. And so after the reorganization is endorsed by the local governing board, they pass a resolution within 5 days, and the proposed plan must be displayed in a public place. So that plan has to be set to go and displayed so that everybody can have a look at it on the website, wherever people gather. And then within 35 days of the proposed plan being endorsed, there must be 1 or more public hearings. And those can be held separately at the 2 different local government places, or they can be held together. But there also needs to be notice of the public hearing so everyone knows. I think all this is intended to make sure that everyone knows what's going on. There's time to get people to the public hearings. And so it's got to be put in the newspaper 10 to 20 days before the hearing and on the entity's website. So once a hearing is held, the governing body can amend the proposed plan or agreement. And so maybe they hear from you at the public hearing, they decide to make some changes to the plan. Once the changes are summarized, that has to be put out on the website or wherever else for everyone to see within 5 days of that summary being done. If the governing body decides to move ahead, they have 180 days from the close of the last public hearing to approve the final plan. And they must call for a referendum, and that must be held within 60 to 90 days after enactment of the resolution calling for the referendum. If the referendum fails, the whole process cannot be started again for another 4 years. If it passes, reorganization becomes effective based on the date that's specified in the plan. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on the rundown of that. So for a voter-initiated reorganization, this is when the voters decide to develop a petition for reorganization. A valid petition must contain at least 10% of registered voters in each government's entity to be organized, or 5,000 signatures, whichever's less. If the entity to be reorganized has 500 or less voters, signatures of at least 20% need to be are required. So, unlike a board-initiated reorganization, with the voter one, the process to consolidate or dissolve, the plan itself will not be developed until after the referendum on whether to consolidate or dissolve passes. So once the proposed plan is prepared by the governing body, voters have the opportunity to conduct another petition drive to require a second referendum on the plan itself. If that drive is successful, another referendum is held, and it too must pass in order for reorganization to take effect. If the governing body is unable or unwilling to prepare and approve that reorganization plan, so after the petition happens and it's decided to go ahead, if they're dragging their feet, 5 voters who signed the original petition can bring an Article 78 to the state Supreme Court, and depending upon its findings, the court can either refer the matter to mediation or issue an injunction compelling the governing body to act. So it's a way to get things moving. So here's our chart. We have a handout. I should have said this earlier. There's a handout out there that has both of these charts on it with the timelines and the details. So that's available for y'all to take. I'm not going to go through this because it's a lot of nitty gritty. But this handout is also on our website, so where there's other good information as well. So this is a similar process to the board-led, but there are several additional steps due to the petition process. One thing, so for this process, the petition must be filed in the town clerk, with the town clerk in the town in which the greatest amount of, what's that?
It's for village or voter initiate dissolution, be the village or the
Right,
the government.
but if it's, okay,
Be the village or
right, yeah, okay, right, so
sorry.
if, that's right. Okay, I was just, if it's a town it's not you guys, so I can skip that part if it's, we'll just go right to the village part. So if the village is reorganizing, the petition is filed with the village clerk in the village that is being looked at to consolidate or dissolve. Okay, so I'm not gonna go through all this timeline, it's nitty gritty and, so just to reiterate, on this type of reorganization, the plan is completed and the board approves the final plan after that first initial vote is taken. So once the plan is complete, as I said, the voters may file a second petition requiring another referendum on the plan itself. This petition must contain signatures of at least 25% of the voters, or 15,000 signatures, whichever's less. Same process with the clerk and all that takes place. If the petition is accepted, the board must call for a permissive referendum. That's the second vote on the plan itself, and that's got to be held within 60 to 90 days. And then the publication rules all apply to that situation as well. So if the plan is approved through this permissive referendum, the reorganization takes effect per the terms of the plan. If it fails, it doesn't happen. So this is a tool that you can use. So if you've got that initial vote without the plan or without a study, and people don't have all the information maybe that they need to make an informed decision, this is another tool that can be used to let them vote again now that they've got some details. All right, so here we've got a ton of villages that have voted with a voter-initiated reorganization. And as you can see, 34% have voted to reorganize in the end. here we've got the board-initiated list of more recent, it's a much smaller list, but 59% have approved it. So higher rate seems to be approving the board-led ones. What these figures here do not show is the number of boards that looked at dissolving or consolidating and ultimately decided not to have a vote. So we don't have that bit of data, but. So just some things to consider during the process. Those flow charts, there's a lot of how many days you have to do each thing. So timing is key to this whole thing, and I'm going to talk a bit more about timing on the next slide, so I won't bother now, but it is something to consider. Your public participation and board involvement, how involved are your boards going to be? What kind of are you going to have a committee, to get people together and get their ideas? How is information going to be disseminated to the folks? Getting it out there, getting the full picture out there to people is something you need to consider, and how you're going to do that. There's all your special districts this is for the municipality that would be dissolving or being consolidated. You got to think about your special districts, your tax reassessment, public safety. Oops. Went too far. Tax reassessment, how that's going to go with the dissolved community. If the village has properties that need to be transferred, that's going to take some time. The workforce of the dissolving or consolidating municipality needs to be figured out. And then if you're dissolving the non-voting municipality, how are you going to deal with those folks? Because they don't get a say in a dissolution. So that's something you need to consider. Timing is everything, as I said. You've got one of the major considerations is that towns and villages operate on different fiscal years. When you're trying to coordinate the transfer of functions and services, there may be times of the year where the budgets are overlapping or there's a gap. So that's something to consider. Elections of governing boards should be considered when coinciding with a reorganization event. Turnover of board members during the process can influence outcomes of other votes, including on the reorganization. There's the issue of an entirely new board needing to be elected before a reorganization can take place. This is most likely to occur in a town-on-town consolidation where there are 2 existing town boards, but a whole new board needs to be elected for the new town. In these circumstances, election laws still need to be followed. Referendum dates can be a bit of a constraint and should be considered. Scheduling around holidays, around other elections. Maybe you want to time it out that your vote is going to happen on election day when you get the most people out. Well, you've got to back it up and kind of march out your days and all those things that need to occur first. So you want to think about that. You want to think about your snowbirds. If they're, maybe January isn't the best time for a vote because you're going to miss that entire population, or summer vacation weeks. All that stuff is stuff to be considered. When just another within this timing situation, the electorate petition is first filed. That starts the whole timeline if this is if you're doing a petition process. So once it starts, all those days need to be followed. So you want to make sure you're marching that out ahead of time and thinking about when it's going to fall, when these key votes might fall. Maybe that week of, when the holidays are really getting ramped up and crazy, maybe that's not the time to hold it, or maybe it is because people are out and about and they can swing by for a vote. That's, your community, what works best. There's a lot to the legal process, so that takes time, getting those special districts figured out, transferring employees, properties, new budgets, new local laws, all that stuff takes time. So you just want to make sure that you're allowing ample time for the process to take and run its course, basically. You don't want to rush it. With a voter-initiated process, there tends to be a sense of urgency and it tends to make the process get a little rushed. And, so if you're a board and you're hearing a lot of chatter around the coffee shop about all this, you may want to get out in front of it. You may want to see if you can hold off on the folks filing the petition. Give yourselves some time to do that study or the plan. Get the most information gathered together so that people can make an informed decision. And that's, I think, the key. You don't want people voting on something that they're not really sure what's going to happen with their vote. So getting the word out and allowing time for that. Okay, and the last thing I think this is the last thing I talk about, is a little incentive by the state to reorganize is the Citizens Empowerment Tax Credit. And this is an additional annual aid to municipalities. It equals 15% of the tax credit is equal to 15% of the combined real property tax levies in all the municipalities involved in the reorganization. It's capped at $1 million, and it's awarded to any of the surviving municipalities on an annual basis. So there's no, you don't have to apply, there's no deadline, it just becomes part of your state aid upon reorganizing. And it, in this case, a municipality refers to any city with less than 1 million people, villages and towns. So, and these payments start the state's fiscal year after the reorganization takes effect. So a nice little incentive to do this. So for a, I'm not gonna bother with that because that's not you guys. Just with this tax credit, it is expected that 70% of the tax credit should be used toward the reduction of taxes. And so that's the expectation from the state. This little example we have here of our fictitious town and village, you can see here that the two fictitious local governments with a combined levy of about 825,000, not levy of 825,000 would receive about 124,000 in additional annual state aid if this village in particular were to dissolve into the town. So that's a little incentive to do this, and then I am going to pass it over to Carl to finish it up. What did I do with my glasses? There they are. Okay.
Hi, we'll just cover a couple of examples, one of which was a village that dissolved, and then the other one is a village that chose not to dissolve. But in your case, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, it's still going to be Saugerties. The post office isn't going to go away if the village were to dissolve. None of that would change. It would just be, when you were entering, it would say, welcome to the hamlet of Saugerties instead of, the village. But Village of Seneca Falls, you may know Seneca Falls as being the inspiration for Bedford Falls in It's a Wonderful Life. It's also known as being an early hotbed for women's rights. So the project summary, basically an earlier study had determined that shared buildings and services, it would save some money for village taxpayer money, but more would come from dissolution versus shared services. With the shared services, the dissolution, it would be a net annual savings of a little over $700,000. The village savings would be a little over $8 per $1,000 of assessed value, or about $810 annually for a village home assessed at $100,000. That study was done by CGR, who is the Center for Government Research. They're based out of Rochester, and they are an arm of Eastman Kodak, and they're set up as a nonprofit. They've done a number of studies for for the Department of State, particularly in the western part of New York. And if you go on their website, they'll have other studies, not just in New York, but they also have done work in New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Probably the biggest one that they did study for consolidation was the consolidation of Princeton in New Jersey, which ultimately was voted and passed, I don't know, probably about 8-10 years ago. Some of the challenges. So the study found that the majority of residents felt that village taxes were too high. It also felt that historic preservation concerns within the village, and that the village preferred to retain their police protection, whereas the town outside the village did not have those services other than the county sheriff and the state police. The solutions, ultimately what happened, and you'll see that on the next slide, they voted to consolidate by a narrow margin, or to dissolve the village by a narrow margin. All functions and services, and this would be something that would have to get worked out between the village and the town, but in this case, all functions and services became a town responsibility. The buildings, village-owned buildings, and some of the other assets were transferred over to the town. If they were unnecessary, duplicate stuff, they could be sold to help offset the village, the village liabilities. And because the town cannot run a fire department, what they did is that they formed a fire district with 2 separate companies within the town boundaries. They also formed special districts for lighting, water, and sewer, and they ultimately formed a unified zoning code maintaining the historic areas of the village. The final count was, as I said, it was a close vote. It was 1198 for and 1112 against. And the village ceased to exist at the end of 2011. Most of the studies that have been done, if the village were to dissolve, they recommend that 12/31 of any particular, whatever the particular year is, it be the end date of the village, and that's because for budgeting purposes. And as I previously mentioned about the tax impact with the town, this is before the CETC tax credit was applied. It ended up increasing the town taxes by $439.02. However, that was decreased by the CETC tax credit. Here's one that chose not to dissolve. This is the village of Johnson City. Johnson City is in 2 different counties, 2 different towns, and 2 different counties. So, and this one was also pre Article 17A, 2007. The village received a petition to dissolve with 2,600 signatures. The village had a population of about 15,500, and at that time it was the biggest village to go through the dissolution process. Right now we're working with another village that's got the official population is about 33,000, but it's estimated that there's anywhere from 35 to 50,000 people living there, and that's Spring Valley in Rockland County. This was another one done by CGR. Some of the challenges for this one. The village had career police and fire because it's a bigger village. They kind of needed to have a career fire. The town, the pay scale for workers in comparable positions was less than that in the village. Some of the things that came out of the study, if they were to dissolve, they would have to form some, same as previously, it would be some fire, water, and sewer districts. And the county sheriff would have to replace the village police. And the sale of Village Hall would help offset part of the village debt. And the village, who is currently responsible for a joint sewer treatment system, that would transfer over to the town, as well as many of the employees from the village would go over to the town, although there would have been a net reduction of 32 positions. The vote for this one, again, this is an older project, 2007. We haven't heard anything back from Johnson City since this took effect, or since this happened. So it hasn't come up for discussion again. But the results were, again, this was a narrow defeat. It was 22-15 for against 22-57 against. But some of the options that came out of this study, they could have worked on a shared fire services in agreement with Endicott, joint planning and zoning between the town and village, unified zoning ordinance, and the possibility of joint or consolidated court operations. Again, as I mentioned, we haven't heard anything back from them since then. So they haven't applied for any other grants to help with any of those other shared services. The CETC, the Craig grant, the Citizen Reorganization and Empowerment Grant, it's non-competitive. This is what, if the village board were to move forward with this, or if there were a petition, the village can apply to our office to get this grant. It's not, as I mentioned, it's non-competitive. However, there are some certain parameters that need to be met. We would need like a board resolution to apply for the grant, as well as the application itself. For the study, well, actually for the whole project, it would be a maximum of $100,000 for the project. $50,000 for the study, and potentially, if the study were passed in referendum for dissolution, $50,000 for the implementation. And for implementation, you'd be looking at costs such as legal services, consultant services to help with the process, and the like, or transitional personnel to help with the project as well. Eligible applicants, towns, villages, special districts, eligible expenses, contractual, capital and construction and equipment costs, and transitional personnel. Here's a couple of resources that are on our website. We have a copy of the one in the back. There's both the Craig grant that we just went through. It includes the guide and the summary of the process, and there's also the Citizen's Guide to Petitioning local government for local government consolidation or dissolution, and that includes how to set up all the paperwork that's needed for the petition. The next steps after, either a board decided or to apply, or a petition came in. After the application came in and was reviewed and accepted, one of the suggestions that we have would be to form a dissolution study committee, release an RFP for a consultant, select the consultant, and then once that's laid out, have a kickoff meeting. Last week we were at the kickoff meeting down in Rockland County. One of the things that they typically come out with is an existing conditions report. Then they often have a public meeting, and then based on that, they come up with plans and alternatives. Another public meeting, and then they should transmit the final study to the village board. And then here's some contact information for Amy and myself. We can come down for additional meetings if we're not in other communities. So if you have questions, please give a call, check out the website. Up next is Tim will come up, Tim Rogers from the town of New Paltz, former mayor of New Paltz as well, to just go over what he's been through with this process.
Thanks, Carl and Amy. Yeah, my name's Tim Rogers. I'm from the village of New Paltz. No, I am from the village of New Paltz. I live in the village of New Paltz. The village is also part of the town, just like Saugerties. Does anyone know how many villages there are in Ulster County? Right, I gave you a hint. I just listed 2 of them. How many total villages are there? 3, right? So Ellenville as well. Does anyone know how many towns are in Ulster County? 20. 20 towns, 3 villages, 1 city. So I've been a big proponent of the town and the village of New Paltz merging or consolidating or reorganizing for a long time. And I've spoken with other elected officials across the state, particularly officials in Long Island. And my favorite example to compare to Ulster County is Nassau County. So in Nassau County, does anyone know how many towns there are? 3 towns. 3 towns in Nassau County. Do you know how many cities there are in Nassau County? 2. Right. Do you know how many incorporated villages there are in Nassau County? There's like 60-something. So there are double-digit number of villages in every single town in Nassau County. So that's one of the reasons why I think consolidation or reorg in an Ulster County village like New Paltz makes a lot of sense, because we're already sharing an assessor, a court, fire, police. I got 2 different building departments, one in the town, one in the village. They follow their own separate zoning regulations. So even if you consolidated, none of that would need to be changed unless you wanted to, which I would think would be a great opportunity, is if our community, the entire town of New Paltz, did a full comprehensive master plan to reimagine, like, what do we want to do as far as zoning districts across this whole town? But that's an example of something that has nothing to do with consolidation or dissolution or reorg or whatever word we want to use. And I think that's kind of the struggle that we've had, where people will ask questions about, well, what about this and what about that? I'm like, those are fantastic, really important questions that have nothing to do with whether or not we consolidate. So one of the things that we did in New Paltz is we did a dissolution study. So whether you dissolve the village or consolidate the town and the village, at the end of the day, it's exactly the same thing. The village goes away, and then you just end up with one government. But the gigantic difference between a dissolution and a consolidation, and so when Amy and Carl were showing their slides, and they were like, these are the citizen-initiated dissolution votes, these are the board-initiated dissolution votes. There wasn't a single consolidation vote within that list. There's only been one consolidation vote in this entire state, and that was the town and village of Pauling, and that was not a board-initiated consolidation vote. That was a citizen-initiated consolidation vote. So that's where, you know, a few community members got signatures, they went to their board, they said, put this up and let the community vote on it. And it went down in flames. And the reason I believe it went down in flames, and the reason why I think probably any vote would go down in flames, is like, you need elected officials to lead. You need elected officials to say why this is a good idea. If they don't believe in it and they say things like, well, we're just gonna let the voters decide, it's like you're wasting everyone's time on, you know, taking a poll. I think what's unique about what we're doing in New Paltz is it's really very simple, straightforward stuff. We're taking the town tax levy and we're laying it on top of the village tax levy, and we're like, well, here's that aggregate, and then there's a couple of things that are going to go away, like you're gonna have one board instead of two, so you save money by, you know, not having 5 of those elected officials. And then we know that, for instance, there's a treasurer who wants to retire in a couple of years. Well, that's fine, because a town only needs one financial person. We have a strong financial person in the town. So you can pull out that individual salary. But at the end of the day, this is local government. Local government is lean and mean and under-resourced, right? I think what's fascinating about the way local government works is it's not like a city or a county or a state. You have a bunch of staff who are doing things like being generalists. They have to do a lot of different things. And I think what's interesting about, like, in our situation, we're not planning on eliminating a single staff. Like, even if you had someone in the village and someone in the town as staff, and they were doing similar jobs, and you're like, okay, well, one of you can do that job. Well, that's fantastic, because now I freed up this other person to go do those other things. Like, this is not like a corporate merger where you're saying, like, well, there's some redundancies and we're gonna save some money by reducing headcount. Like, that's not what this is. So then you ask, well, then why in the world would you ever do it? Well, you do it because, as Amy and Carl pointed out, there's a Citizens Empowerment Tax Credit. So that's $1 million per year. 70% of it has to go towards lowering taxes. 30% of it could go towards lowering taxes, or you could use it just for other programming or just transition costs, and that's in perpetuity. And then we'll have the detractors say, but what happens when the state doesn't give you the money? Well, it's in state finance law. There's also 20-odd communities that have already dissolved that are getting this money. So if the state takes it away, you're gonna have all of those communities being very upset. So I think that's the hardest thing about discussing consolidation is it's new, it's different. Like, our villages have been incorporated since 1888. Our community has been discussing the elimination or the dissolution or the merger of our two governments since at least the 1940s. You can go into our library, and we have a really amazing historical department, and Carol Johnson will give me a big fat binder like this with newspaper articles discussing this topic, and it starts in the 40s. And, you know, big proponents of it in the 60s, 70s, and 80s with the New Paltz League of Women Voters. It was generally shot down and discouraged by the elected officials, particularly the male elected officials in the village. It was voted on twice. There were 2 dissolution votes in New Paltz, 1966, 1993. A few hundred people voted in each. Both times they went down. Both times the elected officials were opposed to it, because they didn't want the change, and I appreciate it. It's like, you know, probably the most special thing about living in a community like New Paltz or Saugerties is, like, you know, our, you know, precious walkable Main Street, our community character. Everyone is nervous about losing that, and I appreciate that. That to me is, let's not do something new that could potentially disrupt the thing that we love and appreciate. So I get that. But I'm very nuts and bolts about this. I can't really think of another reason why our community would not look to reorganize and end up with lower taxes for town outside the village residents as well as village residents. One detail I would change in your slide is that, so in New Paltz, our plan is not to create a new fire district. Our plan would be to take our existing fire protection district and then create, and that serves the town outside the village, just create a new fire protection district to serve the hamlet area, which is currently the village. So there should be no change for the volunteer firefighters in terms of what they do and what is expected of them. Because the way it currently works is that it's a village fire department, so the administration of that fire department is handled by the local government. So if you dissolve the village, then you can create a way, and I got an opinion from your colleague, Attorney Natasha at the DOS, who explained to me a couple of years ago, the way you do it is exactly this, where you end up with 2 fire protection districts, and then administratively, the local government, in this case it would be the town, would then serve all the administration functions, as opposed to having fire commissioners. Like if you were, you certainly could create a fire district with elected fire commissioners, and maybe that's something that our community in New Paltz would want to do. We, again, that's an example of, if we want to create another taxing authority like a fire district, we might do that, and we could do that before consolidation or after consolidation. The point is, it has nothing to do with whether or not we consolidate. So lots to talk about regarding this topic. I think it's super interesting, and it's been really challenging. Like, we have plenty of people in our community who believe we have already consolidated, because I ran for town supervisor last year, and I explained that the main thing that I wanted to work on was consolidation or the merger of the town and the village. So every other day people are like, how's consolidation going now that we've already consolidated? I'm like, no, it's gonna be on the ballot in November. And that's the difference too, is that we purposely chose not to do a dissolution where only village voters get to vote. We purposely chose to do a consolidation where the entire community gets to vote. So whether you live in the town outside the village or the village. But then the rub with that is, so let's say town outside the village votes it down, it's done. Let's say, it could be 90% of all the people in the town outside the village, but then if the village voters vote it down, it's done. It doesn't pass. It's not a simple majority of the entire population. It's basically taking the 2 pools and seeing whether or not they want to consolidate. So I'm here for follow-up questions, but I'm going to hand the mic over to whoever gets it next.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, the microphone. Yeah. So I was gonna give the microphone to the village trustees and the town board first for questions for Carl, Amy, Tim, and then we'll bring up Fred and Bill, and then we'll have it for public questions and comments. So I got the microphone.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Yeah. I was just a guy who walked in from the street. No, that's okay?
That's fine.
Okay, yeah. I just thought this seemed like an interesting place to be for a couple hours. My name is Scott. I'm a professor at SUNY New Paltz.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Oh, I heard you.
You don't need to clap. It's all right.
That's always good class.
Yeah. and I run the Benjamin Center for Public Policy Initiatives at SUNY New Paltz, and we've been very involved in the New Paltz consolidation. And I wanted to, Tim hit something at the end that I think is really clear, but I want to do two things. I want to very quickly, because you've received a ton of information, I'm not going to take up much time. I want to connect some dots here real quick. One is that the reason that there haven't been a lot of, there's been no successful consolidation and only one successful consolidation vote is because it is harder, right? There's no doubt that it is a harder process. The dissolution process is basically village votes to dissolve. Now it's a town problem to solve, right? Whereas the consolidation process is one where both groups need to work together ahead of time, come up with a plan that they feel good about, put a lot of energy into that, feel good about that, then put it to the voters and hope it passes, right? So it's a lot of work, but it includes a very strong consensus building process that dissolution doesn't, right? In theory, right, village could just up and dissolve one day, and I mean, assuming they're following DOS rules, and that totally changes the town dynamic without nearly as much input. That was the one point. My second point and my last point is only going to be that there's a lot of confusing parts to this, and to many of the people in this room, a lot of those confusing parts may not be confusing. Many of the people in this room probably pay close attention to local government. They work in local government. They know the day-to-day. They know about tax levies and budgets and committees, and they serve on planning boards and all of that. But there's many more people that aren't in this room for whom that stuff is all sort of happening on TV, right? Or just in the ether. So one of the things we've been doing in New Paltz is really trying to create materials that are non-complex, deal with specific issues, and deal with specific community concerns, and provide those to the community so that they can understand. For example, fire has long been a concern in New Paltz. Towns can't have fire departments. Well, that must mean that if there's a consolidation, all of a sudden the town will not be covered by fire, everything's gonna burn down. But that's not at all true, right? There's a system for handling that, and we're trying to create the materials so that they can understand and then make an informed judgment about whether it's actually what they want to do, right? So I think there are a lot of complicated pieces here, and I think they can all be solved is the short version, right? If it is something that this community decides it wants to pursue, either in the short term of sort of scoping things out, or the longer term of actually building out a process that results in a vote. So I'll end there because you have received a ton of information, but I'm happy to answer any questions just like anybody else.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for coming. This.
Oh, okay. You're good.
Y'all want to scoot out here? Y'all are kind of.
We need Amy too.
Yeah, Amy. Okay, so our elected officials, do y'all have any questions or comments? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just have a question. Why is the state so anxious to give incentives to do this?
Well, the CETC tax credit, as well as the new Article 17A, well, it's not so new anymore, but the Article 17A was born out of Andrew Cuomo. He thought that there were too many layers of local government, and if we started with a clean slate, there were no towns, villages, cities, fire districts, anything, would we do the same thing today as what we've layered and layered and layered on top of each other over the last 250 plus years? With, like, let's use fire districts or fire companies, for example, fire districts. Fire companies were stationed, when they were formed, they were stationed, you know what, like a horse's distance away from each other at that time. Do we need as many today as what we had back then? You know, with the modern improvements in transportation, roads, and whatnot, can they be better situated? Are their locations, are they in the best locations? So that's kind of why he passed and pushed for the new Article 17A and the CETC tax credit, as well as the Craig grant program.
And the tax credits, what does that do to the state budget, of the state taxes?
Well, there's been money appropriated for the citizen empowerment tax credit, every year since it was formed, and there's with the number of villages that have dissolved, it hasn't come close to using all the money that's been appropriated for it.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Stephanie Bassler, Town Board Member in Saugerties. The budget, the grant allocation of $100,000, I think, $50,000 for a study and $50,000 for implementation. I can't even begin to think of the list of things that need to be done and costs of the process that would blow through that budget quickly. I'm just wondering if Tim can speak to that from experience about what sort of financial support you've accessed and whether it's been enough, and how you can sort of keep the wheels of this initiative turning, when the process is difficult and probably expensive.
I think there's no question about it. There are some transition costs that are material. We've estimated what we anticipate our transition costs would be. Scott probably has the numbers memorized, so I'm going to hand the mic to him in a second. But the idea is that those are effectively one-time costs, and the CETC is in perpetuity. So you're receiving that $1 million, and Saugerties would also be eligible for the same maximum amount based on the size of your tax levies. I think what's interesting about communities like ours is we're kind of in a sweet spot. Like, there's plenty of communities that are much larger. Like, I talked to the mayor of Ithaca, and like they wouldn't care about of course they would care about $1 million, but it doesn't really move the needle. Whereas like $1 million for the town of New Paltz or the village of or the town of Saugerties, that's a material amount of money. But there's no question about it. It's a few $100,000s to pay for some of those, integration of laws. But again, I think what's unique about our situation is like in our consolidation agreement, like if you word search the word police, it doesn't come up because we're not touching the police department. If you're talking about fire department, it's really an administrative piece. It's not like an expensive thing. It's really just, changing, some of the way like things are handled legally and administratively. So I think it's not as, and it kind of goes back to the point I was trying to raise about like communities like Long Island, or even like, the town of Montgomery in Orange County. There's 3 villages in the town of Montgomery. Like, imagine trying to unwind something like that. They think that's where you would end up in like a very different ballpark as far as expenses. But I'll let Scott talk about it.
Well, the one sort of short add-on I would add is that to Tim's point earlier, places like Saugerties are not generally operating on these sort of luxurious budgets, right? Where you're just sort of like, having, figuring out what to do with all the money, right? So one of the implications of that is that both the town and the village are already sort of operating without any slack, right? So on the one hand, that sounds like, well, that's tough, that's gonna be costly. On the other hand, what that means is that your actual consolidation processes probably don't include a ton of overlap, as is, right? I doubt there's a ton of things that the village is doing and the town is doing in one person, right? So you're gonna need, so in some ways, the budgets might mesh together more than you might realize at first. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges and processes that are involved, and Tim can speak more a little bit on that, but I think that if you sat down and did a study, one of the things you'd find is there's a lot of places where it goes together.
Thank you. Kind of a separate question really quick is just to open this up. I think it's a big part of the topic in Saugerties is the good relationship that we have with labor unions who are working in department employment in the town and village, and our I would think our shared hope to continue with those good relations and to support solid employment opportunities in our communities. What sort of relationship have your processes had with labor unions in stakeholder presence and being a part of the conversation, like from the early days to where you are right now?
Yeah, that's a very important consideration because in the village there's one collective bargaining agreement, and the representation is through CSEA. And then in the town there are two bargaining units. So there's a general unit and a highway unit, and the representation is through Upstate. So if you were to consolidate, the way it works is that the village employees become town employees, but they move over with their contract intact until it terminates. But then they would be given the opportunity to become members of the town's labor union. But then, as we all know, it's the members who decide who their representation is.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vince Bono. I'm on the village board. And I just want to know, do you have a sense of the constituents in New Paltz, how they might be leaning, or any feedback that?
We have three categories, like some who support it, some who are neutral, and some who are outraged.
Do you have any more public hearings, or is that all?
We have a public hearing Wednesday night and then again on the 29th. So we're reverse engineering from a ballot referendum on November 3rd. Mm-hmm. So we want to take advantage of the fact that the BOE is already hosting an election. So we're putting the referendum as part of that, to save money as opposed to doing our own special election. Mm-hmm. So the BOE requires you to have everything teed up 3 months in advance. And then our DOS friends, have, General Municipal Law Article 17A, and then they're like, well, you have to do this by this date and this by that date. So we just reverse out the calendar, and that's why we have the public hearings when we have them. And then our two boards, the town board and the village board, has, and this is a weird word, we've already endorsed the consolidation agreement.
Okay.
And all that means is that we basically sent it to public hearings, and then we have, public hearings that are required by our DOS friends. Right. And then we have the calendar date of August 5th. That would be the date that our town board and village board will decide whether or not to send the question to referendum.
And I have another question. So what I'm understanding is that you're not really looking on a local level to save taxes locally. It's because you're getting this big bump from the state. Is that, am I understanding?
So we model out 3 different scenarios. Scenario 1 is no CETC. Scenario 2 is 70% CETC. And scenario 3 is 100% CETC. So with the 2, the 70 and the 100, town.
Goes to taxes.
Right, in tax.
Yes.
Right, so the taxpayers in both the village and town outside the village see a reduction based on the snapshot in time of our most recent tax levies. But if you assumed 0 CETC, the village residents would see a decrease, and the town outside the village would see an increase about 1 to 2%.
Oh, interesting. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else?
I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Janine Mayer. I'm on the village board. So that's it.
I'm so glad you did that. Any other questions, comments from? Okay. So, Fred and Bill, y'all want to come on up and we can have questions? Here, I'm going to give y'all another. Microphone. Yeah.
Hi, everybody. Thank you all for coming out. My name is Fred Costello. I've been supervisor for the town of Saugerties for the past 8.5 years. It's an interesting scenario to be in. My job says town supervisor, but I never have a delineation in my mind over town resident versus village resident. How that function happens on occasion is maybe someone has a problem with the village court. My goal will be to the village court, and I'll direct them to the area where that service is delivered if you are a village resident. But if you're a town resident, then I'll call our court or our building department. I think Bill will share this thought. We have a strong personal relationship, as most of the town board and the village board shares. I think that enhances our ability to serve our shared public in many ways. I don't want to steal thunder, but the Harvester program and a lot of other things we've done together wouldn't be possible without that level of cooperation. The town border districts rely upon the village reservoir for the water that we distribute, and those relationships need to be solid and strong for them to be effective. I'm proud that we've been able to sustain that, and then I'm also proud of Bill and I were both part of the police consolidation when we did it, and we've been, I know Bill has some numbers he's likely to share, but that definitely saved our community at large money over time. I think one of the difficult challenges about this conversation was there is a clear cost savings that first year for village residents, but then there's a cost avoidance or a small decline for town residents. I know a lot of folks, as I was coming in, were expressing concern as town residents, well, how is this going to impact me? And our experience back then tells us that there's certainly going to be a measurement of cost avoidance. But now that these programs have been bolstered, if we were to move forward, we would potentially benefit from using the money that we would then become eligible for. I think our community, if we choose to go down this path, is better with a consolidated effort to take a critical look at the services we provide, and are we doing it the best way possible, and can we do those things better in another format? I think that's a conversation we need to have at the table with our partners on the village board to be effective. If we don't do it that way, the uncertainty that offers our employees, our residents, and everyone else who's a stakeholder at the table is unfair, and in some capacity might bring fear to the community. And if this did come up for a vote, likely not have supporters. So I think if we choose to go down this path, and we need to be thoughtful, open about it, and give everybody the opportunity to understand what we're doing and come up with a plan similar to what they've been able to provide to their community in New Paltz, where there's an understanding about, how are we going to handle fire services, because that would be an issue for us as well. How are we going to resolve the water and sewer relationship in a deeper way? How would we do the building department, the courts, all the services that we provide and the village provide? And I think our residents need to know what that looks like, as well as the employees who might be impacted by that type of conversation. While I have the mic, I want to thank everybody for coming. I think your presentation was wonderful, Carl and Amy. Thank you, and Scott and Tim for coming up. Tim has kind of lived and breathed this for the past few years, but I think having him here is so unique because he led the village board and now he leads the town board in New Paltz. And I think, having the opportunity to wear both of those hats is unique. And I think it's helpful. And I think in many ways he can articulate the potential benefits and the potential pitfalls of this type of process better than anyone. So I really appreciate you taking some time out to come up tonight. And Scott as well. Benjamin Center was helpful when we did the police consolidation 15 years ago. And I predict if we do go down this path again, we will rely on them for help again. But with that, I'll pass on to the mayor.
Thanks. Well, I think I'm going to take Tim's approach. I'm going to run for town supervisor. Okay. No, seriously, Bill Murphy, village mayor. Been a mayor since 2010. Been on a board since 2003. Lived here my entire 60 years in the village, as did my father and my grandfather. So 3 generations village guy. Obviously, I'm very biased towards the village, though I do love the town just as much. Honestly, since this topic came up and we knew we were going to have this meeting, I've been sick to my stomach for 3 months. It's just, I take it personally, so this community means a lot to me. It always has, as does Freddie. And one thing we always compliment each other. Freddie and I have been friends for 45 years, and we manage this community. I know, I'm 60, he's 57. Yeah, okay. So and we both started as trustees and board members, and we actually talked one day, said, hey, maybe one day I'll be supervisor, you'll be mayor, and it worked out. And, we talk every week. We share a lot of things. There's a lot of commitments that we both have, so a lot of times Fred will go, Murph, I'll go to this one, you go to that one, because it can be time consuming. And he's definitely much more of a talker than I am, so don't go anywhere with him. You can't get out of the room for like an hour when he starts saying goodbye to people. As far as this whole process goes, listen, I'm open-minded. I wouldn't be a good leader if I wasn't open-minded. Do I want to see the village dissolved? Absolutely not. This dissolution is not something that excites me, okay? Is there a possibility for consolidation and shared service? First of all, we do a ton of shared services already, as Freddie mentioned. Our departments, we share manpower, we share equipment. A lot of people don't realize or understand how much on a daily, weekly basis we save in our budgets by sharing resources all the time. Not to mention the shared service agreements we have with other communities. I have a big thing with my DPW guys. Every time they want to rent something, I'm like, no, you're not renting something. You're going to call the town. You're going to call Esopus. You're going to call Ulster, and try to borrow from them first before we go out and rent something. So we are conscious and we try all the time. And I get it. Listen, we all pay taxes, and taxes suck. We know that. And but don't let it be lost that I pay village and town tax too, and Freddie pays town tax. But also, when I chose to live in a village, I knew there was a village and town tax. I knew that. That was my choice to live here. If I didn't want to, I could have lived in a town. I married a girl from Glasgow. I made her move to the village. So I get it. I hear everybody. My main number one concern, I have 2 concerns really. No matter what path we go, if we go a path, is 1, I don't want to lose the quality of service that our people in the village are used to. My DPW guys are out there, my water and wastewater guys are out there, my building and grounds guys are out there. We've done major improvements at Siemens Park, the village beats. My guys are always working on the streets. We help out whatever we can with different projects, and we do a lot of personal stuff for people. Last week I helped 2 of my DPW guys rescue 5 raccoons from a storm drain. It was kind of cool, and I don't want to see that personal touch that we have within this village go away, and I'm not saying the town would. That's something I'm very, in touch with. And my big pet peeve is, and we did this in the police consolidation, I was very involved in it, like Freddie said, and I was one of the last holdouts because I was not going to approve or vote yes on the police. I was deputy mayor at the time. I was not going to approve and vote yes on it until we were sure that nobody was getting pink slipped. And through attrition and all that, we came down to 1 employee who was not going to be able to go over, but he wasn't a vested full-time officer yet. I had an opening in the water department and gave him a full-time job, and that's when I signed off on it, because to me, nothing's worth giving somebody a pink slip and putting them out of work unless they deserve it. And that's where I'm gonna hold true to, is that no matter what we do, I wanna make sure every one of my guys who still wanna work, every one of my employees who want a job, have a job. And I wanna thank Carl and Tim and Scott and Amy. Again, this is more information that my head's spinning right now, actually, but it's a lot of good information. I really, really appreciate it. I love Tim's perspective on it. He really, gave us a lot of stuff to think about. I didn't realize they've been doing it for almost 80 years, so I hope we get to, our grandkids will finish this up, Fred, all right? But that's all. Just thank you for coming tonight. This means a lot to me to see this turnout here. Again, the Orpheum, great place, and it's a great forum for something like this, and I am so impressed with the turnout tonight. And I know there's a lot of people that wanted to be here tonight that called me and said they're sorry they couldn't make it. I don't think there would have been any room for anybody else. So this is outstanding, and it's a tribute to our community, and I want to thank all of you for showing up.
All right, I think we're all willing to take some questions. So Katie has a microphone.
Oh, okay.
You have to line in. Sorry, it's just our format. Oh, wait, let me turn it on.
Thanks. Hi, my name is Scott. I showed up because I saw this was happening and it felt like a very big deal for both the town and the village. But I'm uninitiated and an outsider to the insider, process here. Could we take one step back and could maybe you guys, Mayor and Supervisor, share why we're here in the first place, who called for it, whether this is, a voter-led thing or a council-led thing, a primer for someone like me, and then also, I know there's a lot of sentiment and emotion around it, but if you could share like the sort of, other than the $1 million tax credit, which is obviously significant, sort of the logistical pros and cons as you each see them to a consolidation. But just a little background for those of us who don't know. Oh.
We did it.
Okay.
It's us. We do outreach. I do outreach at Upstate Films, and we do balanced growth community conversations. And we thought this would be a topic. It's been floating around for a while.
It came up at one of our past conversations, and so we thought this was something, given what we were hearing, that a much more intensive kind of research.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can blame us.
So there's no ballot yet or initiative yet. This is a conversation.
This is a
Okay.
community conversation.
So if you guys could fire just the pros and cons as you see them, aside from the $1 million and the jobs lost, the stuff you haven't touched on yet, any thoughts you have, I'd appreciate it.
So we're 4 or 5 weeks away from starting our budget process for 2027. Every budget cycle has its own challenge and cost driver that we have to make room for in some way. And oftentimes we start looking at things that maybe we can consolidate or cut or do better with. I think the mayor and his board, they just came off of a difficult budget cycle. And I think that got folks who are having coffee in the morning talking to each other. And that's, they want to know, hey, is there something that we haven't done yet that might be helpful? And I think in that context, there's a curiosity amongst all of us, can we do better? And the state representatives and Tim are demonstrating a way where if we go for a grant to do a consolidation study and figure out that maybe there is some economic benefit, and then these would be the risks associated with going down that road, and the community can have some better information about that conversation. That's probably helpful for all of us, including community leaders. So I think that is my summary of why we're here. I think Carl might be able to offer some other. I also think something Tim brought up that doesn't get enough attention that should. We generally do run lean as far as the number of people we staff and what we're able to achieve. And one of the things we do during budget cycle is, can we be leaner? But the division of labor is an important thing. And sometimes we just keep piling things on our most successful employees until they get to a point where they're going to break or start falling through the cracks. The division of labor, when you have a little bit larger organization in some cases can be inefficient, but in some cases it can be very efficient. And I think with some of the services that we provide together, there are those opportunities. I don't think the village building department could be as successful as it is without the support and cooperation of the town coming out as well. So, can we memorialize that in a stronger way? That's the question mark that's out there that if we go through the process to figure it out, we can get an answer to. You want to add anything to that?
I just want to add one thing, Fred. To what Fred said too, and just to give you, in the last 5 years, I have reduced, not me, myself, my board, overall, our village workforce, I believe, has been reduced by 4 full-time employees through attrition, where we had someone retire, we figured we had enough people, we didn't replace them. So, it's not automatic if someone retires, we're gonna replace them. We look at it saying, yeah, can we get by? I know our water department's down 1 guy, DPW's down 2, and wastewater's down 2 guys. So that's 5 actually. So we're always, now we're probably at the bare minimum now. I don't know how much more we could go, so.
The other part of that, and sorry, Tim, is water and wastewater folks are becoming increasingly rare. There's not a lot of young folks going into the field. So policing is a similar thing. The cost of those has gone up exponentially since COVID. Small organizations like ours, if you have to pay $10,000 more for a $45,000 or $50,000 position, that's a pretty big increase. Is there a way that if we combine those types of things, can we be more competitive in attracting talented employees and be more successful realigning that workforce in a way where people can express their talents in a more meaningful way? Those are all questions. That's the point of this process. Sorry, Tim.
I was going to add something in terms of like stuff that I'm witnessing as the former mayor and now town supervisor. I'm going to use kind of like some silly analogies, but it's like, let's say I think consolidation often just dilutes a specialness, right? So like, let's say we took all the pizza shops in Ulster County and rolled them up into one and made one pizza shop that serves all of us. The pizza would be pretty mediocre at best, right? Like individual efforts make things better. However, I do think we're in kind of like a sweet spot too, in that we're large enough, but not too large. So I kind of feel like what I've seen with staff, because I've worked directly with village staff, I work directly with town staff, is like they're very good at their jobs, but we've kind of set them up for failure in a way, and that like many times they have to kind of like take their fiduciary responsibility, because that is what they're employed to do, right? They're basically employed to advocate on behalf of their taxpayers and ratepayers. So like sometimes that will involve uncomfortable, unfortunate disagreements with their colleagues in the neighboring municipality, in this case town and village. And I've seen that time and time again. Like for instance, in New Paltz, we have a pool and we have an agreement where the town pays for operations and then the capital improvements are split 50-50. So then we're like, well, is that a capital improvement or is that operation or is that a shade of gray? Or like, how do we fight about this year? And it's like, I feel like the staff are doing their job. We're paying them to be our advocate, to be, in charge of like being careful with those taxpayer dollars. And I feel like so much of the stuff that we end up with when we're constantly like trying to figure out funding formulas, like how is mortgage recording tax shared, how is sales tax shared, how is cannabis sales tax shared, like all of these things are nuanced. All of these things are just unnecessary, like financial exercises that we should not be paying our staff to do.
There's been a very strong focus on the financial here, which is totally reasonable and expected, but there are also non-financial aspects to this that are worth at least thinking about as a community and what you want to get out of such a process, right? So if you eliminate the village, one of the things that happens is you don't have a village government, right? And you have one sort of government, right? So town and village need to think about, is that what they want, right? Do they want one town government? Do they want to consolidate planning? Do they want to, consolidate committees? So there are pluses and minuses to both of those things. I'm not here to tell you, definitely consolidate so that you have one planning process, but one planning process might be better for the town, I don't know, / village. So there's a list of potential benefits that are on sort of a different list than the tax savings list that's worth thinking about.
I think go back to the financial stuff a little bit. We share, our boards and Bill and I share a really deep capital project problem right this minute. Their village DPW facility is lacking. They need to make a substantial capital investment in it to bring it up to current standards. We are in barely a better situation. Our highway department facility is lacking. One of the buildings is in a pretty sad state of repair. We're going to have to, at some point, bring to the public a major capital project. I can kind of hear some coffee shop chatter if they come with a $3 or $4 million project and we come with an $8 or $9 million project in the same year. This room would be twice as full as it is tonight. That's a conversation we're going to need to have in spite of any other conversations that we had here this evening. That's an immediate need. We both share it, unfortunately, at the same time, but we need an improved facility for all that equipment. The cost of that equipment has gone up exponentially. A dump truck is $275,000. When we want to plow the roads and the first thing the crew has to do is come in and clean off the windshield and the hood, you're really not off to a great start in the middle of a snowstorm. You want those buildings to be heated, the equipment to be secure and warm, and get right out on the road, loaded with salt that's not frozen, and get out there and make sure the roads are passable for our folks who have to go to work and EMS services that may need to come out. So that reality is not going to change in spite of this. In some format of a consolidation, we may be able to have that conversation in a different light and even leverage the state for some more capital. Right, Carl? Yeah. Okay. All right. We have more time for questions.
Yes, hi. My name's Elizabeth Rees, and I live on Elm Street, and I've lived there for 22 years. And I'm just going to say that I really appreciate having the village and a separate government entity from the town. I do believe the consolidation of certain types of services makes sense, but to consolidate and get rid of the village is not a good step in the interest of the village residents. I could give you a current example. We have a battery energy storage system going through the planning process. As a village resident, it impacts the village residents more than the town residents, and we're able to go to the village board and address this and have the village board take it seriously. And we're not having the same experience with the town board because the town board do not live in the village. So it's very important the village residents are supported and that we have people to go to consider our interests. When I hear stories which may or may not be true, I'm just going to say that because I didn't hear it firsthand, where the village residents' concerns are dismissed because the town board members don't live in the village. Well, actually, the statement that was made by somebody was that a certain person said that why was the other person concerned because they didn't live as close to it, just like that person on the board. And that's like really disgusting to me personally, because I am a village resident and I am going to get impacted. And then also in terms of these forums, while having community conversations is great, there's a place for having town and official government business discussed in official government offices and in official government process. I've already heard that this particular conversation is going to be moved forward again with another session. Those conversations should be happening officially, not unofficially. There was nobody on the stage tonight who presented an alternative perspective, so I would not say that this is a balanced conversation. To me, this seems like an advocacy session. Thank you.
I didn't hear a question. I understand. I do want to disagree with that. My experience with the board members, and two of the board members are village residents. They do not view the village and the town separately. We, I think to the degree that we can, we view them as one, and we treat the residents' concerns as best we can all the time. And I feel comfortable saying that on behalf of the entire board. And, you know, 2 of the board members have been, one's been in the village for many, many, many years, and I don't anticipate that person would not live in the village if they had the alternative. So, all right, we have another question?
Hello, everybody. I'm Lisa Fitzner. I am a village resident as well. I live on Market Street. I'm going to start with financial first and say that the idea of consolidating redundancy appeals to me as a residency. The village tax that we are being charged to live in the village has grown so substantially. It has been a 20% plus lift twice in the last 3 years. It costs, my village tax is more than my property tax at this point in time. That is not sustainable. I will also say that I personally do not know how I benefit by paying that tax living in the village. Now, at the same time that this is all being discussed, the idea of consolidating or dissolving, as Elizabeth Reese mentioned, there are several big initiatives that are in the works right now that affect this village. The battery storage being one, which could potentially affect the safety of the residents in this village. And secondly, there's a development behind Elm Street that is going to impact the village, especially the front line on Elm Street and Market Street, in regards to their quality of life and their property values. Okay, so these are all happening right now. And again, I will only speak for myself and respectfully say that I feel like the current representation that we have in the village is too passive in regards to these issues. My question is, if there is a consolidation, and I believe that New Paltz's proportion was 50% lived in the town and 50% lived in the village, is that correct?
It's a hair more village, but pretty close.
Okay, we are more 25% to 75%. So my question is, does a village resident's voice gain strength in a consolidation where we are now one town? Or is our voice diminished and we will have less representation in regards to these very significant things we are looking at right now?
Yeah, I just want to address, there has not been an increase of 20% in village taxes twice in the last 3 years. Just to clarify, assessments have gone way up. The village is not the assessment body. People's assessments didn't go up. This year, our tax rate did go up 10%. Prior to that, it had gone up a total of 5% in 5 years. The tax rate, there's a difference. Now, obviously, if your assessment went up, that's exasperated. But just to give you a table set, before the police department consolidated in 2010, our village budget stood at $3.7 million. 15 years later, we're at 3.5. So tell me where the village is going crazy, spending more and more money. 15 years to get back 70% of that, and that's with healthcare increases and everything else that comes with it. Every bit of increase in my budget this year was mandatory. Based on healthcare, insurances, and everything else. There is no fluff in that budget. These are requirements between union contracts and mandates. We don't add fluff to our budget. I wish we did. In hindsight, I wish, we went 10 years where we didn't raise the tax rate once in 10 years. The first 10 years of the police consolidation, many of those years, the tax rate, we were at 7 something before the police consolidation. 10 years back, our tax rate was $5.15 per thousand. So we tried to give that money back to the village residents rather than just saying, hey, there's a money grab. So we did that for a long time. Now, obviously, yes, everything in Saugerties and New York State's going up. My property value went up tremendously in the last 5 years. My taxes went up a lot. but it's not just related to the tax rate in the village budget. It has to do with the assessments as well.
So I think if we kind of take ourselves out of thinking about the town or the village for a second about costs and think about our home budgets. I know I'm paying significantly more for car insurance. I'm paying significantly more for my homeowner's insurance. I'm paying significantly more for my utility costs. I'm paying a lot more for groceries. So the impact of that, the village government and town government are not immune to. We suffer that as well. There's also been a significant impact on wage inflation. You know, as little as 5 years ago, we were paying like 30 grand for a police car. Our last car is going to be like 55 by the time we outfit it with a radio and everything else. And there's no way to get around that. I mentioned the cost of a 10-wheel truck. You're just under $300,000. That's something when I first started in town government, we'd be like 110, 120. And it would last 10 or 15 years.
Our first fire truck I bought was $800,000. Right now, if we were to get a new fire truck, it'd be almost $2 million.
Yeah, so,
And that's in 10 years.
yeah, so if we could think about our home budgets a little bit and relate those to the challenges that I'm faced with in my board and Bill's faced with in his board, it's hard to put all those things in a package, and we do the best we can. Back to why we're here this evening, you know, maybe if we could jointly build a highway facility, DPW facility, and the insurance on just one building versus two, that would certainly offer a savings. But you know, that we're not there yet. But I think those conversations need to happen. Go ahead, Marcy.
Another question.
Can you address the question I asked, though?
I think
The one about, will the village residents, if we do a consolidation, will our voice be more powerful, or will we be diminished?
Depends who you elect. I mean, I think the argument that you're making, like at face value, a village resident could easily say that I have a representative in the town government because I live in the village, therefore I live in the town. And then if you live in the village, you also have representatives on the village board. So you have double the number of elected officials to call and ask to, you know, help out with, you know, whatever constituent services you have questions about. I mean, I'm a super pro consolidation guy, but I think to answer your question, yes, you are ending up with fewer elected officials. However, I do believe that when it's more clear who the elected officials are, then the community will be able to hold them more accountable. I think what's interesting in New Paltz is, like, I don't think people really understand the difference between the town and the village generally. You know, I was the mayor for 10.5 years. I think, you know, everyone thought I was their mayor. And I wasn't. I was the mayor for a portion of the community.
Excuse me, could we have our town supervisor and then answer her question, because it's the same question that I have also.
My opening comments, I said that I don't see myself as representing the town or the village in any different capacity. So to try to answer your question more specifically, if you have a problem with your assessment, you're going to come to the town anyway, and we're going to advocate to make sure that you get access to the assessing department and that your grievance or concern is addressed. Maybe not to your liking, but we want to make sure that you have access to that. If you have a problem with the police department, that's going to be the same thing, because we provide that service to the village residents and the town residents equally. If you have a question for the village clerk, you're going to go to the village government, and if that's a problem, you're probably going to reach out to a trustee or the mayor. If that's no longer there, you're going to come to the town and deal with the town clerk. And if you have an issue there, one of the board members or the supervisor, whoever's there at the time, would try to make sure you got the proper access to the question you asked.
Excuse me, can we have some more questions?
Yeah, we can go forward.
From the floor. Yes.
Hello, my name is Stefan Yorubek. I am a resident of the village of Saugerties. I'm a newcomer. I moved here 23 years ago from the great city, Punkaki. And I actually was born and raised in Dobbs Ferry, New York. And your appeal, Mayor, resonates with me. I would hate to see Dobbs Ferry become the town of Greenberg. But Saugerties is the same name. I'm a commissioner for the town of Saugerties. And I think an easier path might be to consolidate committees so that Dave Minch and I can be on the same commission. Dave's the Village Historic Preservation, I'm the Town Historic Preservation. And we often get our hands slapped for talking about anything in the village. And we do some things in the village, by the way, when people aren't looking. So this is a very tough wicket. And I just want to be, it's been a long night. I want to say shame on the state of New York for not offering this money to us to create a more holistic community, forcing us to dissolve, the whole thing is ridiculous. The state of New York should be there for us and give this money to us to create a more blended community that respects the historic nature of each community.
We do. It's called the Local Government Efficiency Grant, where you can municipalities can apply for shared services, creating that holistic community like you were saying. That's an annual grant program. It will be open again here in the fall.
We have a little time for some more questions. If someone wants to step forward to the microphone.
Any other questions? Oh, Janet? Okay. Got one more question.
Hi, I'm Janet Grillo, and I'm a resident of the Village on Elm Street. Here's a question. If we were to consolidate the village and the town, would it be possible to increase the number of town members, board members, so that we could have more equal representation? And as, to your point, it depends on who we elect, but we have more seats, then we can elect more people.
I'm going to take a stab at that, but I'm certainly not versed. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong, hopefully. I believe we can definitely increase the number of the governing body to 7. I don't think we could delineate districts, so to speak. You could do wards.
Oh, okay. There's a population threshold for wards, right?
Do you know what it is?
I don't, and if I say it, I'm gonna get it wrong.
Okay.
It's gonna go
All right.
for anybody.
All right, that would be a good question for when we get, yeah, that we could add to the study.
Hey Tim, I'm Sam Spitzberg. I live here in the village as well. What did your study cost, and was it paid for by the town or the village?
We did a dissolution study last year. It cost like 40-something K. Half of it was paid for by Carl's team. And then currently the joint consolidation agreement is probably running about 60K, and we're hoping to get half of it paid for by Albany. And then if we implement, then we'd be eligible for additional grant money. But I think to answer your question, like total out-of-pocket cost is, 60 plus 20, so like $80,000
And was that village or town cost?
combined.
So the two
Oh,
the two
split, so-
governmental
Right, so
organizations.
last year, the
paid for
village,
it.
it came out of the village's general fund, and this year it's coming out of the town's B fund.
Roger, thank you.
And as a little bit of an added incentive, if New Paltz were to vote to consolidate, after the whole process is done and over with, they would also get approximately 80% of their study money back at the end of the game. So it would end up being a 90-10 split.
All right, anyone else?
Why not? I've got one more question. Amy, in the course of your presentation, you talked about the town board voting again it, that it could effectively sounded like veto a voter-initiated consolidation or dissolution. Did I understand that correctly?
Can you take the mic?
So they can have a second vote after the plan is prepared and developed. They can have a second vote on the plan itself. And if that vote, so the boards of each municipality, if it's a consolidation, would vote. And if they vote to go forward with a community vote, then they both vote again. So, and if it goes down, if they don't each vote for it, and a majority in each municipality for a consolidation, then it doesn't go forward. So it is a second vote, but it's on the plan itself at that point.
So, perhaps I'm unclear in answering my question asking. If it is a voter-initiated process, and 90% of the town and 90% of the village votes to study it, does the town board and the village board independently have a veto power before the study even starts?
I don't believe.
Okay, so what you're asking is about a voter petition that comes in and is certified. Okay, what happens then is that it's up to the village board whether they do a study or not. It has to go to referendum, but it would be up to the village board whether the public had the information handy to make an informed decision. Well, his question isn't completely on key. If there's a petition that comes in, the village board cannot say no. If it's certified by the village clerk, if the petition's signatures are certified by the village clerk and there's enough of them, then it has to go to a referendum. The village board cannot stop it.
Thank you.
To pick up on that point, in the event that occurred, the village board would put out a referendum, and let's assume it passes. That scenario, I think the pitfall that we share, Bill and I think our board share about that is we are backpedaling. We just have to execute. The public had spoken. That's the loudest voice in the room. Their will has to be heard. So now it's not going to be, hey, let's think about the contract. We have a percentage of folks that are represented by the CWA, so does the village. If those guys work in DPW, are they going to stay in that contract? Or are they going to move over and become Teamsters? We can have those conversations at the table if we do it as part of a consolidation. If it comes as forced by referendum, it's basically we're not going to have the opportunity to iron out many of those wrinkles and do it in a more organized fashion. Is that fair?
One thing you also may want to consider, and this happened in the village of Lake George, was the board started the process. There was a study done, and then they the village board voted not to proceed with it to a referendum. Well, then at that point, a group of citizens came up with a petition, and they forced the referendum. And what happened at the end of the day was that it ended up getting voted down anyway, and the village of Lake George did not dissolve into the town.
I think this might be your question, and I have the same question now that we're talking about it. Because what I like about consolidation is that you're creating a plan that the voters vote on, and then that plan is then given to the town board, and for all intents and purposes, that's the plan they have to follow. Whereas when you pursue a dissolution vote, the community votes on dissolution, and there's a plan piece to it, and then even if you have a yes vote, you give that plan to the town, and they might say, well, that's nice, and then they do whatever they want to do anyway. So that, I think, is the real advantage of consolidation versus dissolution. Am I describing that right, Carl?
Yes, pretty much. The town does not have to follow through with the recommendations by the village, but it's recommended that they be brought on board and to discuss things over and to see which services they want that they're planning on keeping when it comes to code enforcement or whatever the case may be. I don't mean, sorry, not code enforcement, but like say.
That's one that we don't share.
You don't share?
No.
Okay.
That's a perfect example.
Okay, so it's, we recommend that everybody try to get on board if there were a dissolution that were being looked at.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Deidre Byrne.
Use the microphone.
Hi, my name is Deidre Byrne. I live in the town. My question is a broader question for the people from Albany. You've talked about places that have dissolved, places that have consolidated. Is there any history of someone making that decision, implementing either the dissolution or the consolidation, and then finding after a set number of years that it didn't work for them and reversing it? And if that has ever happened, or even if it hasn't, is there a process for that?
It has not happened. Those that have dissolved have remained dissolved. And honestly, I would. There's in order to form a village now in New York State, there's an additional process that has to be done. It's not as simple as what it used to be. So my thinking is that you would have to start all over with the village formation and go through the new process.
Thank you.
Have there been villages incorporated in New York State in the last 20 years?
There has been some villages incorporated in the last 20 years, not in the last year and a half or so, since that new provision has taken effect.
Hi, Janet Grillo again from the village. Okay, so I think what I understand from the flow chart is that if there's the referendum to vote for a plan and it's voted down, that we then have to wait another 4 years to bring it forward again, okay? But let's say, yes, we want to make the plan. Then the plan is put forward, but it's a vote against the plan versus to even think about it, right? Would we have to wait another 4 years, or could we just revise the plan? Because maybe the problem is in the details.
I believe in that case, you would revise the plan.
So you could revise the plan and put it up for another vote. So it could continue the conversation, you have to wait for another 4 years.
No, I don't believe that there's a 4-year wait, but we can check into that and get back.
Okay.
And we haven't had one where the plan's been voted down.
Okay, thank you.
So last question. Okay, thanks. This question is actually for the organizers. Thank you. If I may, thank you. So I heard you say that you were going to do another follow-up session about the same topic, and I'm wondering if you're going to have some opposing views or different perspectives in your next presentation from towns that maybe have considered this or been approached by the state and decided that they did not want to pursue this.
Oh, sure. Well, we can do. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe Lake George would be a great example.
Sure.
Thank you.
That's right. Tannersville. Oh, Tannersville consolidated.
No, Tannersville voted it down.